Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. My Patreon, every month I give them a theme, and this month's theme is fashion. And so if they want to participate, they can make a piece that has some sort of relationship to fashion of some sort. And I usually do one too, and this month's I think I'm going to do something that has to do with the way that clothing fastens. There's a lot of interesting fasteners, buttons and things like that. I discovered one that I think is called a frog fastener, and I think I'm going to make something, I'm going to make a tension bracelet that uses that as the clasp basically. And so it'll kind of resemble a frog fastener. Before we get started though, I want to first of all thank my patrons. You guys are my primary supporters, and I really appreciate all of not only the financial aspect of it, but the kind comments and all of the good advice and knowledge you guys share with me. And I hope you're getting as much out of it as I am, so thanks for that. My YouTube subscribers I want to thank as well. We're getting close to 10,000, so tell your friends. Let's get it popped up over 10,000. I'd love to see that. But thank you for all of your support. When you leave those nice comments or when you buy me a coffee, that helps with supplies and stuff. I really appreciate that as I go through quite a few supplies doing this. I look forward to our interactions in the comment section, so leave me a comment. All right, well, let's get this project started and see how it turns out. Let's see what I drew up here. These are my design idea books. You can get these on my merch store if you're interested. I have found that it helps me to formulate my ideas a little more clearly in my head if I sketch them out in advance. And these have a graph in the background so you can kind of keep things symmetrical. There's a couple of cover designs here. There's one more on the merch store right now, but probably another one my wife is designing will show up pretty soon. So, all right, here's what I drew up today. Okay, so a frog fastener basically has a button that sticks up and hooks through a loop. These are usually fabric, but they have kind of, some of them were more ornate than others as far as the number of loops and stuff over here. They remind me a little bit of like the Austin Powers kind of outfits that that he wore in those movies, or when they're wearing the silk vests in Victorian times. They have these elaborate kind of fasteners on the front of them, and so I think maybe that's where it comes from. I'm not 100% sure on that. Someone who's a fashion expert might be able to tell me. But I'm going to use this as the connection for a bracelet that I call a tension bracelet, where the springiness of it kind of holds it together after you clasp it around your wrist. So this is just a thin wire that I used to model it. I'm going to use some 14 gauge to actually make these. And then I'll probably use some 8 gauge half round for the band that goes around the wrist. I have a bright green Chrysoprase. It is called a frog fastener, so I'm going to use a green stone. And I think I'm going to put it on top of a disc of 18 gauge. If you look at it from the side here, this is how this works. This part of it here will slot into this by going over the stone, and then the tension will pull it this way. So it'll have kind of a slot underneath the stone because it's got a little upright bar and then another disc of metal down there for this to sit in. And so I'm going to have to make a bezel for this, mounted on a little platform with a post and then another platform basically underneath it with enough space to have a 14 gauge piece of round wire go in there. Like I said, these will be 14 gauge round, 8 gauge half round, and I think for the bezel I'm going to use 26 gauge 3/16 inch fine silver bezel. I think that's 4.7 millimeters or something like that. The stone itself is a 6 millimeter Chrysoprase Cabochon. So we'll start with the bezel and then we'll go from there. If you've never been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. I also use liquid flux called My-T-Flux that I spray on with a spray bottle, which is not what everybody does. My torch is a Silversmith acetylene air torch, which is a great torch. I love it. I've been using it for years. I've actually worn out one handset on that because it started to develop leaks, and I could have probably gotten new O-rings and stuff for it, but I opted to just get a new handpiece to make sure I didn't have any dangerous leaks. Another thing everybody asks me about are the shears that I use. These are little Fiskars craft shears. They're available at hardware stores and craft stores. I'm going to leave just a little bit extra for filing purposes when I mark this. I'm just going to flop a little square saw on top there, make sure it's touching both sides of that gap. Most people, when they're new and they're making bezels, the biggest problem they have is they keep the heat on a little bit too long, and the bezel starts to spread open because it gets a little bit too hot. So bezels you got to go pretty quick with. I'm just going to reshape this. We'll check our size then. It looks like pretty good on our size. Set that to the side for a minute. This, but I'm going to need it to be just a little bit, the disc that I'm going to put on the bottom needs to be a little bit bigger than that. Like I said, I'm going to use 18 gauge. I think I got it right here. So I'm going to use my disc cutter to knock some rings out. Now I think I want this one here to be a little bit bigger than the one that's on the bottom. So let's kind of figure out what size we need here. That's kind of a nice size. Let's see which one of our pegs is about that right. That's almost exactly right there. So I'm going to use that one for the top. And then not quite that small. So those two. So I'm going to make 2 discs out of 18 gauge sheet here. I have to do this on the floor because I have to hit it hard enough to where it knock everything off my table here. So I'll be right back. Okay, I got my 2 discs, and on the bigger one, I'm going to solder this bezel in the center, in theory, in the center. Sometimes when you dry the flux, it boils and moves things around a little bit, so if you do it kind of slowly, it does it less. That's pretty close. So I'll just toss a few of these in there. Cut a few minutes ago. Make sure they're touching the sides. I'm going to throw one more in there just to be safe. Looks pretty centered. I made a little X in the center there before I did this, in the hopes that I'd be able to use that as a guide to get this piece of 10 gauge round soldered right to the center there, pretty close. So I'm going to attempt to do that. I need to file this end flat. Okay, so I have some solder there I can just pick up on the end of that piece of wire after I flux it and flux this. I'm making a pretty simple one of these. You could make a relatively elaborate one, I bet, and come up with some really fun designs. So I don't think this needs to be very wide. I mean, really, it needs to be able to accommodate a 14 gauge round wire, so it doesn't need to be much thicker than that, probably. So let's cut it off. Maybe about like that, and then file it flat. Maybe a little less. So just got a little button there, kind of. I have a t-shirt with a big frog holding up a peace sign, but it's not clean right now, otherwise I would have worn it for this one since it's a frog fastener. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sweat some solder on the inside of this one, see if I can't just plop it on there, and if I can get it to sit flat and everything. So there's a little bit of solder there left. Maybe I should I sweat it on the post or should I sweat it on this thing? What do you think? By the way, if you see me picking up little bits of solder like this, on the pick. That's called pick soldering. It's one of those skills that I found to be super useful, so if you're interested in that, I'll put a link to a video right there. I think I'm going to put it on this to start with. Let's see how that works. I'm going to get it to spread out a little bit there. It's already stuck to that disc, but I got to get this other piece up to that 1450 degrees, which hard silver solder melts at, in order for that to stick to it. I just saw it settle down a little bit. I'm going to take a look at it and see. So this will be able to slide in there. That gives me plenty of room to make it get in there pretty easily. Alright. So now I think we need to make, this is going to be right here, but it's got to be able to fit through this loop here. And so I'm going to have to make it slightly bigger than I made this one. But I used a piece of 18 gauge to kind of get a general idea. Doesn't have to be much bigger than this, just a little bit. So I'm going to unravel this and use it to cut a piece of 14 gauge that's a little bit longer. You could probably do something, you could do this with like twisted wire or twisted square wire or something, or you could texture it. There's all sorts of different variations you could probably do. This is roughly 12 centimeters or so, or 4 3/4 inches, pretty close. So I'm going to add an extra, I don't know, let's add an extra maybe a centimeter and a half, or extra 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, just so I have a little bit bigger loop here. I can also adjust the size of these a little bit if I need to. Let's see if I can't find the center of this. Figured I might as well mark that one now while I'm at it. Okay, so I need a circle that's bigger than that to go around. Maybe that size right here. That comes to about almost a 4 1/2 on my ring mandrel. So I'll start it a little bit smaller down here. These don't need to be super big here. So maybe think to start with I'm going to solder this one to make sure it quits moving, and then that should make it easier to shape these other ones better. Once that's like that, I'm going to solder these other solder joints, and then I'm going to flatten it out a little bit with my plastic hammer on my little bench block. That's reasonably good. Yeah, it's not super easy to get through there, so that's good. You don't want it coming off easily. Alright, so that's good for that side. Now, the other one, that should sort of match this one, has to attach to the bottom of this thing here. So wrap around there. But I think it can still flare outwards a little bit, I believe. So I'm going to try and make it very similar to this one. I'm guessing this would be kind of an intermediate project. A little more than a beginner would probably want to do, but pretty easy for someone who has some experience. So I feel like that's my next step, is to solder that to that. Trying to get it to where it sits at the top of the ring there, so I push the ring down into the magnesia block just a skosh. That way it won't impede the other wire going over that. So let's see if we can get that to work. So that's how it's going to hook like that. Alright, so now I need to figure out how long of a piece of half round wire I want to solder onto this, so give me a second, I'll figure that out. So I cut 7 3/4 inches, like 19.5 centimeters I think it was, just to get make sure it's long enough. And then I'll probably cut it down some, but I'm going to solder it onto one side here first. So I'm going to file this flat, and then I'm going to file kind of the end so it has a little shelf. And I should be able to set that on top of there and get a really nice solid connection so that it's not just butted up against there. I'm going to pick up a little extra solder. There's probably enough solder where I soldered that ring closed, but never hurts to have some backup. Oops, I just dropped it. And then I just moved my little thing. Gotta kind of calculate in that this is going to go on top of that. And so we can kind of a guess as to how big I want it to be. So I'm going to clean this up with the Dremel to get it all nice, and then we'll pickle it. One of the things that we're going to have to do after I polish it probably is I'm going to bend this. This has been annealed really to where it's in a really soft state, and so in order for this to be springy and hold well, I'm going to have to get that to be a little bit more hard, and to do that we need to work harden it, and that means bending it or twisting it or something. So I'll bend it, twist it, pound on it with a plastic hammer some, and we'll see if we can't get that a little stiffer. But let's get it cleaned up and pickled, and then I'll come back and I'll set the stone for you. I was getting ready to set the stone in front of the video, and I realized I just started setting it, so I apologize for that. But basically, I just put it in there, and then I'm going to use flat side of my needle nose here. Just kind of push it up against there. And once you have it pretty much pushed in there, then I'm going to use the rounded outer part here to burnish that top edge. Burnishing is just kind of pushing that down and rubbing it really hard. Okay, well, I may do a little cleaning up with the fine silicone polishing oil on the Dremel just right at the top of the bezel bit. Basically, that's our bracelet. I did do a little bit of pounding on this with a plastic hammer just to stiffen it up, and I bent it back and forth a little bit so it's springy. And it's just a little bit hard to slide on there like that. So I think it'll be pretty hard to lose this one. But I'm pleased with it. I think it came out kind of like I was looking. Pretty close. All right. I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. All right, well, that was the frog fastener bracelet. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd love it if you'd spend some time looking at some of my other videos as well, and then maybe subscribe to my channel. I think it's a place with lots of good content and plenty of hours of video for you to peruse and come up with some ideas from. So the other thing is, make sure to hit the video description down below for some relevant links, especially if you want to become a channel supporter. There's a link to my Buy Me a Coffee, which helps with supplies. You can go to my merch store. There's a link there as well. Get yourself one of those nice design idea books to help sketch out your designs. There's a link to my website if you'd like to get some jewelry that I've made. And I don't think we've canceled our Valentine's Day sale yet, but you might get over there before we do that. And finally, there's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out how to become more involved. So check those out, and then come back and see some more videos. So thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.